Alright guys, it's my Bucks weekend and I'm trying to enjoy it, but George Janko dropped a podcast with Voice of Reason. I watched about 3/4 of it, and again, George Janko just cannot understand the easiest concepts. So in this short video, before I go and enjoy my weekend with my boys, all I want to do is to explain what a presupposition is. That's the point of this video. Let's get into it. So I will play the clip first of George Janko, and it's quite evident that he keeps bringing his Protestant presupposition into his entire discussion. He is presupposing that what he believes is true. Voice of Reason needed to stop him there. And again, I'm not sitting here, oh, you should have said that, you should have said this. Man, I was on a podcast 2 weeks ago. It's a humble channel. It was, man, I wasn't like George Janko or anything, right? And I was crapping myself. It's hard. And we had 4 of us on. One of the guests, it was myself and a priest, and it's nerve-wracking. I don't want to talk in front of the priest. I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to speak first. And it's not like you're just relaxed and it's all good. As much as people make it look like that, they're good at podcasts. So I'm not sitting here saying, Voice of Reason, man, you should have said this. And I'm sitting here in retrospect, like he's in the moment trying to address different things one after the other as they're coming to him. It's not easy. Now, he did a great job. I mean, God bless him for even getting onto the George Janko podcast. I was trying to get David Patrick Harry on. I'm trying to get Father Josiah on, but as you know, now George Janko blocked me. So there's no dialogue between him and me anymore. I'll play the clip and I'll explain what I mean and what is a presupposition and why this affects the dialogue to begin with. If you're not addressing this, then the whole dialogue there's no point. This 2 hours is just down the drain. Okay? Let's watch the clip.
Everything you're saying, I'm not agreeing. I'm agreeing with.
Agree, yeah, exactly.
But none of those verses you just described to me, not one of them say that is actually his body and actually his blood. And neither does any of the disciples teach that.
Well, Jesus says that. Jesus says that again in John 6 during the Last Supper.
He says that it's spiritual, not physical.
Well, again, the spiritual means that it's divinely revealed. And when he says the flesh is of no avail.
Okay, say hypothetically is a physical thing. Then you have to say that he was lying, that we do have to do works to get to heaven.
No, not at all. Because remember, you've already said receiving. When you receive something, that's not a work. But
receiving the Eucharist, seeing it the way it is, and by the way, you have to take steps to get the Eucharist, by the way. You can't just go and take the Eucharist. Like I cannot bring my friend who's not baptized or anybody to come and grab the Eucharist. They won't allow it. In fact, no disrespect, there's some Catholic churches that won't let people with flip-flops or shorts go into their church. And you're like, no, you have to dress appropriately. See, what I'm seeing is there's a lot of works barricading the way to Jesus Christ.
You see that point there where George Janko says, well, that means Jesus is lying. That means now we have to do good works to get into heaven. According to whose worldview is he lying? According to your heretical worldview, he's lying. Not according to Orthodox. Look, one of my good friends, Val Ministries, he did a breakdown of this video, of the Initial Avengers podcast, and he talks about the difference between Protestant and Orthodox understanding of works and faith, and how, from the Orthodox perspective, it is hand in hand. The Protestants will say, no, my faith will generate my good works. Where the Orthodox will say, well, how come James says faith is like a body without a spirit is dead? Does that mean the body, which is faith, is generating the spirit? No, it cannot generate a spirit. So it's not that our faith generates our good works. Our faith and our good works are hand in hand. You cannot say you have faith and not have works. Just read James. Just read James. There's a reason Martin Luther wanted to get rid of this book. Go watch Val Ministries' video. I'll link his YouTube channel. You guys probably already know him. He's a bigger channel than myself. And he answers it well. The guy has studied seminary. He's actually qualified to be a priest. I'm some guy on here just reiterating what I'm hearing from other more educated people than myself. But again, I have to, because George Janko, man, he needs someone proper on there. Voice of reason was good, but he needs someone to stop him in his tracks as soon as he says something like this. So now, what is George Janko presupposing? Wait, let's just explain what a presupposition is. Let's just explain this now. I want to read it for you, just so I don't stumble. I think we all understand what it means, but let's just read a couple definitions of presupposition. A presupposition is an implicit assumption, implicit within your statement, that must be true for a statement to make sense or be meaningful. It is something taken for granted before making a claim, even if it is not directly stated. You're presupposing, okay, George Janko, you're presupposing that correct Christian theology says that you are saved by faith and not by works. That is your presupposition. Now, this is a completely wrong presupposition, and that's why you're having a roll-on effect of not understanding how our works are synergistic with our faith. We don't separate and be like, oh, my faith makes me do good works. No, it is one and the same, as a body and a spirit cannot be separated. Or a spirit is not generating a body is not generating a spirit. They're the same thing. They exist at the same time. As Orthodox, if someone is saying that they have faith and that they're not living out this faith, what does James say? Faith without works is dead. Even the demons believe. Maybe I'll put some verses up for you. Okay, look, it's a simple concept, but again, it's because he's Protestant that he's not understanding the bigger picture of the Eucharist, and that there is a synergy. I have to participate. And look, what is he talking about? In the Catholic Church, you can't wear flip-flops and shorts. So he's got a problem with people going to church and dressing appropriately. Like, really, that's your argument against, you need to do good works, you have to dress nicely. You're happy to go meet all these famous people and dress nicely, but when you're going to the house of God, when you're worshiping, when you're you're giving highest worth to God, you're not happy to dress nicely. Doesn't make sense, bro. Doesn't make sense.
And by the way, you have to take steps to get the Eucharist, by the way. You can't just go and take the Eucharist. Like, I cannot bring my friend who's not baptized or anybody to come and grab the Eucharist. They won't allow it. In fact, no disrespect, there's some Catholic churches that won't let people with flip-flops or shorts go into their church. And you're like, no, you have to dress appropriately. But see, what I'm saying is there's a lot of works barricading the way to Jesus Christ.
He cannot bring his friend who is not baptized to take the Eucharist. What is the Eucharist to you, George? What is this centerpiece of the Christian worship? The focal point of our worship is the Eucharist as Orthodox and Catholic. What is it to you? Your mate that's not baptized to partake of the Eucharist, you're arguing about that. You're bringing this up as, what do you think it is for anyone to have? Again, you're so divorced from church history, from the early church, that you will bring up idiotic arguments like this. And I'm sorry, it's just dumb. It's just stupidity at this point. You're not even trying to understand what Voice of Reason is saying to you. And the reason there is frustration in my tone is because, how long am I into this video? I'm about 3/4 into this video. And Voice of Reason has taken his time. He's explained it. He's used verses from the Bible. One thing he should have been using, and maybe he used it later on in the video, is use early church fathers. In my video of the Eucharist, I think maybe that would help George Janko a lot more, because I say it simply, plainly, and make my points, and that's it. I present the evidence, the historical documentation of people from the 1st century, the 2nd century, the 3rd century, and explain to George Janko what I would have said to George Janko about him not understanding the Eucharist. The whole entire Christian community for the first 1500 years accepted the Eucharist to be the body and blood of Jesus Christ. I would say, look at St. Ignatius, the young boy that sat on Jesus' lap. That was the disciple of St. John the Beloved, that could have asked St. John, what does John chapter 6 mean? St. Ignatius, St. Justin Martyr, St. Athanasius, all of these saints, all of these heavy Christian figures, all the way for the first 1,500 years, everyone believed the Eucharist was the true body and blood of Jesus Christ. In a mystery. We're not trying to explain how, but we believe it in a mystery. And you're going to tell me that you now are correct over and above them. That's all I needed to say to him. That's all I would have to say to him, just to make him think. Because voice of reason is almost a bit too smart for George Janko. The arguments he's making is like, it like went over his head. Like George Janko isn't understanding anything of what he's saying. And after about 20 minutes of being explained all these concepts, George Janko disregards it and just keeps saying the same thing he said before he had these verses presented to him. And I'd be interested to see what he would say back if I explained this to him. What are you going to say back to that, honestly? Either you can say that every Christian for the first 1500 years was wrong, or they were right. You can't, there's nothing else to say. And if you tell me that they were all wrong, now I'll tell you where you're going to say that Jesus was lying. When he said that the gates of Hades shall not prevail against the church, then obviously the gates of Hades prevailed against the church. For the first 1500 years, all Christians believed a lie. They believed a heresy. They didn't understand the Eucharist, according to you now. You see how that makes no sense. Overall, I just want to end by saying it is important to address presuppositions when having dialogue with other people. A presupposition is an assumption or a background belief being brought into a topic of discussion. Hope that makes sense, and we're able to have proper dialogue and not to allow people to bring in a presupposition that is unchecked, because like the conversation will go nowhere. It'll go nowhere. I hope this helps someone, and keep praying for George Janko, because the guy needs our prayers to see the truth. As always, guys, thank you for sticking around. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share this with your friends. I hope it helps someone. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next one.